Hello and welcome to UpperPen. My name is Dakota, and today I am talking with Suzannah Rowntree about her series, Miss Sharp's Monsters, book one of which is The Werewolf of Whitechapel. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you so much for having me, Dakota. I'm really excited to get the chance to talk about one of my craziest books.
There's a lot that happens in it. Um, how did you keep the story straight? We'll start here.
I remember very little about how I planned this story at all, except that it happened very, very quickly. Oh, yeah, no, I will tell you that when I started work on the story, I was originally thinking that the protagonist was going to be May, who is like the princess. Um, she was kind of low ranking for a princess. And so nobody kind of expected her to end up marrying or being engaged to the heir to the throne. And so I was interested in her from that kind of underdog point of view. But I was really stuck on the whole series for like months, and it wasn't until I realized, oh, I actually need an even lower class character to be the point of view character that we can meet the character meet this world through. That was when it all clicked for me, and then it all happened very, very quickly. Within a couple of months, I had the whole thing outlined, and I don't really remember.
That's really fast. That's pretty cool. So, talking about May real quick, well, okay, before we do that, do you want to give a little bit of a rundown of what The Werewolf of Whitechapel is about for folks who might not have heard about it?
It's a great idea. Okay, so The Werewolf of Whitechapel is loosely inspired by the Whitechapel murders, Jack the Ripper. Um, it's a story, it's set in a version of 1890s Europe where all the ruling families are monsters. The German Kaiser is a werewolf, the Russian Tsar is a vampire, and I could tell you about Queen Victoria, but I'm not going to. Um, and so in this world that our main character is Liz Sharp. She wakes up in a hospital for the basically reforming penitent working girls. And she has werewolf scars on one side of her face and no memories of what how they got there or what happened to her or who she was in her former life. And the one thing she knows is that um some royal werewolf has scarred her and she wants to find that person and hold them accountable. And so that's why at the start of the story, she takes a job with Princess May, who is looking for a lady's maid slash bodyguard. Um, and so Liz takes the job because she wants to have access to the royal circles and figure out who it was that scarred her.
From there, it becomes more of a murder mystery almost, right? Like almost immediately, something terrible happens to someone.
Yes, this is true. One of Liz's friends from St. Botolph's, another w monster victim, is attacked and killed in Whitechapel. And so more bodies start turning up, and Liz must investigate with the help of, on the one hand, a very reluctant Princess May, and on the other hand, an equally reluctant Scotland Yard inspector, a very tall man named Short, which will give you an idea of the quality of the humor in this story.
It's pretty good. Like the humor's good for what it is because the story is so it's it's very serious in a lot of parts. And then you have like the very tall man named Short. So I like
This
it.
was my first attempt writing humor. And
Oh.
like for years, I had never even tried because I didn't think that that was something that I was really capable of. I've been writing like gritty, medieval, historical fantasy about the Crusades, for heaven's sake.
So this is quite a departure from your other books then, yeah?
It was to begin with. Now I've written many more books in this vein in this world.
So circling back to May, she's one of the first characters we meet in the book. And Liz describes her as the China doll, I believe, as her very first introduction. Um, what was What was your inspiration for May and who she was going to be in the story?
Oh, well, 100% she's, there was a historical person, Mary of Teck, who was Queen Elizabeth's grandmother. And she went by the name May when she was younger. And so basically she's my version of the historical May. Um I read her biography to prepare for this story, and I just so May in the history, May was the granddaughter of a couple. One half of the couple was fully royal. Was he the King of Württemberg? I'm a little rusty on it, but he married a countess,
Mm,
and a countess was considered to be a commoner, for one thing.
okay.
And like if you were royal and you married someone who was a commoner, it was very it was not really allowed. And the only way that you could justify this was to say, okay, this is a morganatic marriage. Um and they would say, okay, we'll let the king marry a commoner, but his children are not allowed to inherit. They're not as royal as the rest of us. They can be known as their Serene Highness, but they're not their Royal Highness. Like this was serious. This was so important. And so so May's father had had real trouble trying to find a wife because he was growing up in Germany and all the Germans were very like hardline on this. Like you're morganatic, you don't get to marry a princess. But it was also difficult for him to marry anyone else because he was kind of too royal for anyone else, but like not royal enough to marry royalty. So then he met the Prince of Wales at a party, and the Prince of Wales happened to have a cousin over in England who was a princess. She was famously very fat and very ungovernable and very popular. Her name was Mary Adelaide. And the royal family had been trying to find a way to deal with Mary Adelaide for years.
Oh, goodness.
And so her young cousin meets May's father and says, "Oh, I have exactly the right." So he makes the match. They get married. They live very happily in London and spend a lot of money. Okay, so one of my favorite anecdotes about Mary Adelaide, apart from the fact that, she would go dancing at balls and everyone wanted to dance with her because she was so much fun, and then she'd accidentally knock people over because she was so large. Um, and Right. So yes, they got into a lot of debt because they had to maintain a royal lifestyle because they were royal, but they also weren't quite royal enough to. It was hard for them anyway. And Mary Adelaide was hosting a charity ball once or a charity event, and she had to introduce like a local grocer to whom she owed a lot of money, and she introduced him as Mr. So and so, to whom we all owe so very much. And May was their daughter, and she was also in the same kind of predicament. She wasn't royal enough to marry royalty. She was too royal to marry anyone else. She had all these social obligations, that she had to spend money in order to attend. And so they were quite poor whilst still trying to maintain a level of acceptable royal behavior. And so she had trouble finding a spouse as well until Queen Victoria met her and was like, "Oh, you would be perfect for marrying my eldest grandson, Albert Victor, who was not very bright.
Yeah.
Eddie will want a good, sensible wife." And May was going to be the good, sensible wife. And so that's sort of where she is at the start of this story. She's engaged to a man who she knows is silly and the whole country knows is silly. And she's trying to make the best of it. And I just loved that about her.
She was really in this difficult position because a lot of times our main character Liz is kind of questioning why May would be doing this. Why would you be with a man who's so silly and so ridiculous? And she's like, well, I don't really have choices. So I thought that was like a really good way to show that.
Yeah, she had fairly constrained choices. And on top of that, she actually had like another of the things that I find very sympathetic about the historical May is that she had ambitions. Like she knew that she was fairly clever and fairly sensible and good at handling tricky situations. And she wanted to make the most of it. She wanted to be of use. But again, her only real path to that was being a wife to somebody. And so she kind of fixed on royal duties as a way to be of use and to follow her ambitions. And like obviously speaking as someone who's not really into monarchy, you know, maybe not the life ambition that I would have chosen, but I can respect her reasons for wanting that and for pursuing it. So,
And throughout the story, uh, she does make decisions that try and actively help people who are in need. So I really appreciate that about her character in this book. I don't know so much about her, the namesake of her. So,
okay, I have a story about this. So, um, May was related to German royalty, and there was this one German princess who, when she was very young, she was a teenager. It was so horrible. She was impregnated by a footman. Um, and she didn't even know what was happening.
mhm,
Um, and it was this major scandal. And when she gave birth, they actually took the baby away. And yeah, and this princess was basically being ostracized by everyone, even though she had no idea what had happened to her.
mhm,
And one of the things May was Princess of Wales or something at this point, and it was a niece or something of one of her German aunts. So May went and actually spent some time with the princess at a place in Germany and was just seen with her socially, and like that would have helped so much to give her respectability, and it wasn't something that everyone would have done. So I
she seems like a genuinely good person,
well,
as much as you can be.
that was one of the good things she did for sure.
Um, in the story, we meet May because she needs a bodyguard, according to her mother. So can you describe what Miss Sharp was growing up to be in this boarding house? Why is she studying jujitsu?
Okay, so the whole idea of having the royal families be monsters, of course, is it's a bit of a metaphor about the predatory imperial structure of especially Europe back then. And so one of the things that was happening at the time was quite a lot of popular resentment, social unrest. You have socialist movements, you have very strong anarchist movements, and you have a lot of people assassinating high-ranking prominent people. There was, I think, a president of France that got assassinated. There was obviously Tsar Alexander II of Russia, um, Empress Sisi of Austria, and a bunch of other attempts on people's lives that were basically aimed at drawing attention to the way that ordinary people were being systematically exploited and abused. I also read a bunch of stuff on the lives of the working class in this period, including Harley Rubenhold's The Five, which is about the lives of the women killed by Jack the Ripper. It was fantastic. Where was I? Right. So you've got all this anarchist and socialist revolutionary talk and action of the deed, propaganda of the deed, they called it, which is when you threw bombs and stuff. And so all the royals at this period were quite paranoid about getting murdered. And so my sort of idea for the series was that, obviously the monsters, the royal monsters are hurting people. What becomes of their monster victims? It's a traditional sort of trope in this kind of story that if you get bitten by a werewolf or a vampire, you become one. Um, but I did some like I kind of discussed and debated that. In this story, you don't become a monster if you get bitten by one because that would be like becoming royal. And we know that in this world, you can't just become royal easily. Um, so like Liz has been attacked by a werewolf. She has slightly enhanced abilities. And what they've done is they've trained her up to be a bodyguard for those royalties using those enhanced abilities and kind of like they've tried to take the people who've been hurt by the royal monsters and they've tried to turn them into people who will prop up the system and serve the royal monsters and use their trauma in service of the royal monsters. But is it going to work?
This is the crux of the book, so we can't talk too much about it, about this strain, but it does continue throughout the novel.
Very much.
Um, so Liz is she's very headstrong, which is difficult in my mind for this time period for a woman, especially a lower class woman. Did you run into any issues when you were trying to like, I don't know, show her character without it being too unrealistic?
Not really. I can explain that. Well, for one thing, I grew up in a fairly conservative Christian environment, and I'm very familiar with being a headstrong woman and finding ways of navigating. And in fact, when you get I don't know if you've read books 2 and 3 at all.
Not yet, no.
But A Vampire in Bavaria has a lot of my own personal experience of what happens when you start trying to speak out against injustices that you see and the way that your friends will start questioning everything they thought they knew about you. Um, so that book is very much based on that, while also being completely about Miss Sharp. It's not about me, but it's like so that's kind of one aspect of the answer. Another aspect of the answer is that women were very socially active in the 1880s, 1890s. There was a strong tradition of women getting out there and trying to improve conditions for the people around them. Whether it was, yeah, it's even women who kind of looked up to today by more conservative people like Catherine Booth or Josephine Butler was an amazing Victorian social reformer who isn't so well known these days. Who else am I thinking of? Sophia Duleep Singh. She was the daughter of the ruler of the Punjab. Her father had to give up. He was the one who they stole the Kohinoor diamond from.
Ah,
She ended up being a goddaughter of Queen Victoria in late Victorian England, and she was a suffragist. Who tried her hardest to get arrested, but they never did because she was a goddaughter of Queen Victoria and it would have looked bad.
oh goodness. Um, I I had a very similar conversation about women in this time period with Jacqueline Benson when we were talking about the first of her Raiders of the Arcana books, because she goes to a
Mhm.
suffragette movement and chains herself to a fence or something silly. And I was like, I don't know if people realize how vocal women were and how, well, you were punished for it in certain ways, but it was also almost socially acceptable, it felt like.
Oh, there was like there's a deep duality to this time period where on the one hand, like you had well, the Victorian period was long.
Yeah.
And like when Victoria herself became queen, there was a writer, Thomas Carlyle, who said something like, "Oh, she's become queen at an age 18. She's become queen at an age when a girl can hardly be trusted to pick out a bonnet for herself, let alone rule a nation." And it's like, that was in the 1830s. By the 1890s, you had the phenomenon of the new woman, which was when a lot more women were wanting to learn how to ride bicycles, become more mobile, become more gain employment. It was a really it was a time when women were asserting themselves in ways that hadn't been seen before. And they were also, and again, like there was this very strong tradition of social justice, social improvement, social work of all kinds from, not just from women who wanted the vote.
Mhm.
A lot of these women were against women getting the vote, but they still insisted on having their voices heard in the ways that they thought were appropriate. And I think we have to respect that, even though we may disagree with them on things.
I just feel like Liz Sharp is such a wonderful character in the sense because she does have such a powerful presence. So I can see how she ended up being the main character of the novels, even though it was supposed to be May.
Yes, yes. I think it was really good having like the two of them as even though Liz is the main protagonist, you can still tell that May was originally going to be the protagonist, because I was just fascinated by her and wanted to sort of explore her very unique outlook on life. And it's just fun. It meant I could write a really interesting and not a very like their friendship is very uneasy and it gets uneasier in the second book. And it was just a lot of fun to write that kind of complicated relationship.
So moving on to a different type of relationship, Miss Sharp and Detective Short run into each other quite a few times in this book. And at first, I didn't know what to make of the two of them together. I thought she was going to murder him at one point because she was so mad. So who is the detective with the silly name Short?
Well, he was largely inspired by Nathan Page's character in Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries. I don't know if you've heard of that series. It's an Australian series based on some Australian murder mysteries, and it's about a 1920s a woman in 1920s Melbourne who investigates murders. I think you'll probably really enjoy it. But the male lead is just this he's got this lovely droopy sad face. And he was my favorite character in it. He's just very like very straight down the line, very straight arrow. And um so I really wanted to have a character like him to sort of offset the iconoclasm that is Liz Sharp.
He's very down
And
to earth.
yeah, like he's kind of the, I guess, the best of rule-abiding Victorian manhood, I guess.
Yeah. I keep trying to think of ways to talk about this without talking about too many of the spoilers because the book is so layered with things, right? Why choose werewolves specifically for this first book? Was there a reason you wanted werewolves?
Gosh, I don't remember. Oh no, wait, I do remember. I do remember. Okay. It was Doctor Who.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I'm
Okay.
gonna say. If you know, you know.
You have a good way of hiding what is going on until pretty close to the end. Um, how did you decide what you were going to tell and what you weren't going to tell?
I think once I realized that the story was going to be told from the perspective of an outsider, I knew that the reveal was going to be a big moment, and it just fell into place very, very early on that it was going to be there and it was going to be like that. And honestly, all else I can say is that I wrote the scene that day, and I came downstairs and I was like, and I couldn't say a word to anybody.
So did you have it written before you wrote most of the book then?
Oh no, no, I work in sequence. I'm not a, but I could see it coming, and when it came, I was having so much fun.
These books are self-published, right?
Yes.
Have you ever tried to send them off to someone to see if they would be traditionally published, or do you prefer the self-published route?
That's a good question. These books, it never occurred to me to traditionally publish them because I knew that they would be a success. Um, and why would I ask somebody else to do something that's already going to work really well for me on my own kind of thing. I did get an audiobook publisher though for the audiobooks, which was fabulous. Marianne Hussey's narration is a delight. Um, I love the job she did. I it's been it was long before I started publishing that I decided that I would do self-publishing. Um, from time to time, I think it would be nice to have something traditionally published. But for that, I think traditional publishing would need to sort of get its act together a little bit better. Th I have plenty of friends who traditionally publish and they enjoy it and feel at home there, and that's great for them. But I also I've heard from a lot of people who've been traditionally published who have then gone on to self-publishing and have found that it's a much better fit for them,
Mhm.
um, less in the way of editorial oversight works better for some people. I like having my editors work for me, um, instead of feeling the pressure of being working for an editor. I also understand a lot about marketing ebooks, which from everything I've heard, traditional publishing isn't so strong on. They'll bring out like a hardcover, and then if that does well, they'll bring out a paperback, and the ebook will be priced way up high. And I just, I just feel like that's kind of the wrong way to do it in this current climate.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that.
So I'm happy just to do it my own way and muddle along. If I got a really good deal at some point, I might just for the experience, just to see how it works. But it's not something that I'm building my expectations or hopes around.
You have more, this is a series clearly. And does it follow Sharp throughout the whole thing?
Right, so this is a trilogy. There are three books, and yes, it's very much a single coherent story arc. Liz, May, their respective love interests, a couple of other characters, such as Vasily, the garbage vampire Grand Duke. We follow them all right through the three books, and by the end of it, Europe is pretty much too hot to hold Liz anymore, so she has to go to Australia, where we may hear from her again.
Is there a spin-off books too?
And then there's a spin-off
Okay.
series, Miss Dark's Apparitions, that begins with Tall and Dark, and um, this is I mentioned Vasily.
Yeah.
And he's really only in one scene in The Werewolf of Whitechapel, but he becomes a lot more important in the next two books. And basically, he gets the first half of a redemption arc, but he doesn't really get the second half of a redemption arc. And he was such a favorite with me and with the readers that I decided, you know what, I'm going to write the second half of Vasily's redemption arc. And so that's what the Miss Dark series is. We get an almost entirely new cast of characters. There are some cameos from Miss Sharp, and we get to see Vasily pretty much fighting tooth and nail against the rest of his redemption arc, but it was so much fun. I have so much fun tormenting that man.
The most recent of those books came out this year, didn't it?
Yes, Dark Secrets.
Okay. So are you still writing in this universe then?
Well, I've kind of hit a pause on the Miss Dark series, even though I have ideas for at least two more stories set in that world. The original plan was a six-book series. I constructed Miss Dark to be a bit more like an episode of the week thing rather than just one overarching story in three books. So it could go on indefinitely. I don't think it will. Yeah, I may write a couple more Mr. Dark books. I definitely want to write the Miss Short series, which is going to be in 1920s Melbourne. And I've been doing a lot of reading and visiting Melbourne quite a bit in order to find out about that. I am excited about writing something set in my own neck of the woods. Um, but at the moment, all that is on pause while I work on a project that has been on my back burner for years. It's a four-book series of Fey romanticides.
Oh, that's quite a
So
departure. Maybe.
I like playing in different sandboxes.
Well, you also have a another series that I was gonna read next after the Miss Sharp stuff, and now I cannot remember what the name of it is. Be
Watches of Outremer. Is that the
Yes.
one?
And that's a much different tone, right? So,
Much different.
yeah, is it more serious? Is that how this is going?
It's a lot more serious. Again, it's basically the 200-year history of the medieval Crusader states. And, you know, war. So, yes, it's a bit grittier, a lot more serious. I'm not sure that I would say that it's darker because my Miss Sharp books can be fairly dark, but yeah, the books are longer and worse things happen in them, and they're a bit more like gritty, epic fantasy. I'm writing it's a bit lower on the actual magic, but it's the fantasy tropes that I love when I'm reading the history. So,
The last thing that I was kind of super interested in is the anarchists and how a lot of them in this story in particular are women. And I'm just imagining women saying they're going to a sewing circle and making bombs instead, you know? So what is the point of having these revolutionaries in this story in particular?
well, honestly, partly it's just to set up the much stronger presence of the anarchists in the next book. And I wanted I guess when I was conceiving of the story, I was aware that it was, that you had the royals and you had the anarchists, and they were in conflict, and you had a lot of people being caught in between,
Mhm.
in this historical time period, and I guess while I sympathize with a lot of anarchist philosophy and talking points, they also very much did murder a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I kind of came up with the idea of, we have the monsters and then we have the mad scientists. And so you do get to see a fair bit of that in especially the next book. And then in the third book, you know, I guess we get a little bit of a synthesis from that thesis and antithesis of the royals and the monsters. The reason why a lot of the anarchists we see in this book are women is just it's because in those times and for these characters, you know, Liz is going to find it easier to talk to women. There were definitely female anarchists, some of whom carried out assassinations as well. There were anarchists who did not approve of propaganda of the deed. They believed in propaganda of the word, which was where they were just going to be persuasive. Um, yeah, so there's like this whole spectrum of anarchies and what was back then as well as now. But yeah, I felt it was a really important sort of social movement to discuss because, well, first of all, there were a lot of uh, there were a lot of anarchists finding refuge in London from persecution on the continent, sometimes for very justifiable reasons, but also like the continent was European powers were generally speaking a lot less free than England at this period. There was no freedom of the press in a lot of the European countries. And so what would happen is things would get published in English newspapers that were not flattering to the royals in Europe. And they'd go to Queen Victoria and they'd be like, look what you let them print. And she had to try to explain to them, I don't let them print things. They do it themselves, you know.
Uh,
Yeah, so it was just one of the main themes in the history that like you can't really talk about the exploitation of the royals without also discussing the pushback that they were getting in so many different forms from people at the bottom.
is it narrated by the same woman as book one?
Yes,
Or-
Marion Hussey did all three. So
It's such a good narration too. I don't think I would have known how to pronounce a lot of things without her, and which is silly because I speak English.
she did amazingly. Dream come true. There's this I remember when I was sent the audiobook files, I was like, I have to go to like I think it's the last chapter in the book. I have to go and I have to see how she performs this one line of Mary Adelaide's, the one about they cannot expect us to mourn a husband of Betty's standing on less ducal income. Yeah, I was immensely pleased. She did wonderfully.
I really recommend the audiobook. It's so good. The physical book is good, of course, and the ebook, I'm sure. But um, I don't know. It's such an active book. Having someone narrate it felt natural to me.
Yeah, no, I can thoroughly recommend the audiobook as well. It's a delight.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight and nerding out over history and werewolves.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's been super fun. I love how far this little book has gotten, and I hope it continues to be discovered and loved.
I I think it's gonna do really well going forward, you know. And now I can't wait to see your romantasy or fantasy romance books. Yeah.
Yes, they'll be quite different again. And I am having the time of my life with them. It's yeah, it's good. I'm really looking forward to being able to share those with people as well.
Do you have a timeline of when you plan to publish?
Not a firm one because I like to be really confident
Yeah.
in the books being completed. So I'm going to try drafting all four of them. I've already got drafts of two of them. So I'll draft all four of them before I make a firm decision. Yes, but ideally, book one would make an appearance sometime in the second half of next year, and that's about as far as I'm willing to commit. I will take longer if the books require it.
You know, from based off the writing in this book, I'm fine with waiting because you did so well to integrate everything. And like, I don't know, I was impressed.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you again for chatting with me tonight, and I hope everybody out there has a lovely, lovely day. Bye.